Welcome back to Comeback Stories with Sunil Robert. In this episode, I want to just touch upon a crisis that is brewing on the sidelines of the world's largest AI summit that is happening in New Delhi. Now, as a tech buff and as someone who made a living in the tech world for the last 3 decades, I've had my share of crises. Some of them direct first-hand involvement, some of them just handling them as a part of the company's ability to handle and respond when something else goes wrong. All crisis communications are case studies for communicators such as me to learn and absorb lessons for future deployment. In this instance, think of it, the world's biggest AI summit, the prime minister of the country comes and inaugurates it, the biggest ministers for innovation, the head of Google, Sundar Pichai was there, some Turing Prize winners, Raja Reddy was there. It's like it doesn't get bigger than this. And the whole focus has now shifted because a small university claimed that it invented a robot, a dog called Orion, and in this day and age of fact checkers and so on, your claims are tested real time. So, as you can imagine, the crisis hit the ceiling. But what made matters worse was the response of the spokesperson or the person who's the professor of communications who did the front-ending of this crisis management. Lot of lessons to unpack right here. I've had my share of controversies and crises in my corporate communicator's journey. But one of the first things in crisis communications you need to learn is acknowledge the mistake. Acknowledge the mistake with humility. Say it with contrition. Say it as if you mean it. Here, there was no apology. There were a lot of explanations. There were a lot of clarifications. There were a lot of double takes. There were a lot of somersaults. And there were a lot of walkbacks. Not a good thing to do in the heat of the moment. You can't even say, this is the fog of war, things could have been done better, and so on and so forth. No, sir. In crisis communication, the fact of the matter is, you need to be calm, you need to bide your time, you need to state facts, because everything is being time-stamped in this day and age. Your comments are being carried real time on television and or social media, and therefore your ability to stick to facts and own this crisis story is a strength that you need to build, otherwise you have no business being in public. Now I can understand how in such a massive expo area, in such a massive exhibitors area, each one is vying for sound bites and each one is eyeing for a piece of that limelight. I can understand your desperation. I can understand why you were driven to do this kind of claims. But as soon as you are fact-checked, you could have said, it was a complete unwitting mistake and we apologize for it, and then just leave it there. The ability for you to be humble in public eye is a big part of crisis communications. The spokesperson, the ones who kept on offering claims and counterclaims and clarifications, there was never any tone of humility. I think people understand that mistakes happen. People understand that faux pas happen. People are willing to live and forgive your mistakes if only you come clean. I have a feeling the line, my 6 can become your 9, it is all a matter of perspective. It is all a matter of seeing where you are. Those lines will be etched into communication history now. Now, I can truly, really empathize with the people at the booth, people at in front of the mic, and the ones who quickly offered a standard boilerplate saying, that person is not authorized to speak to the media and all that. Never throw the messenger under the bus. If you've deputed somebody to be in a public place to relay your public messaging, at least have the guts to back up your spokesperson. A lot of things went wrong in this crisis communication. First of all, to detach the corporate team and say this person is not an authorized media spokesperson, here's the media contact, says that you had no business putting somebody there in the first place. If you did, you should have said, look, any communications to an external stakeholder like the media or a TV channel has to be routed through the media PR person, and that would have kind of solved some of this crisis problems. Now, in the world of PR, in this world of communication, in this world of so much of din and noise, you could argue that any notoriety is good notoriety, it's visibility, and people who have never heard about my university are now hearing about it. But is that the price you want to pay for your reputation? Now, your trustworthiness, your trust, the brand that you want to build is in tatters. So there are a lot of unwanted missteps and flat-footedness that went wrong in this crisis. So here are some lessons to learn from this crisis. First of all, we should have started with an apology, an unconditional apology, stating that, yes, we must have exaggerated our claims. We are truly sorry. This is what is the reality. Secondly, to state that I'm a communications professional, I'm not a professional of AI, I'm not a lecturer in AI and data, and so on, is a lot of smoke screens and a lot of noise and sound. Thirdly, all the messaging seems to be about how great my university is, how we are the epitome of innovation, how we are investing X number of crores of rupees in AI and so on, is all great. They're all relevant facts, but not relevant to this crisis. Here, the crisis was, did you misrepresent, exaggerate, and try to claim some sound bites from the event? Secondly, to turn around and do this double take and said, look, we didn't even erase the brand name. Now, how can we claim there was some semantic difference in the way we said and the way you perceived? Now, if you are a professor of communication, you know that the onus of communicating the message is right on the communicator and not the recipient. I mean, you don't need to know a lot of communication theory to understand that the onus is on me to communicate and ensure that the message is understood the way I intend. And if I did not, then therefore I failed as a communicator. So these were some of the key observations from this crisis. All the national media, including some big name newspapers, have all reported. Now, you could argue that this can be seen as a storm in a teacup that got you some notoriety, and it'll die down tomorrow, and hope it'll die down tomorrow. Or you can say this has been a blot on our reputation. Sometimes these crises actually test your fiber. It'll test your character. My mind goes back to a few crises that I, as a corporate communication, was in the eye of the storm, so to speak, along with some of my senior leaders who were brilliant leaders. The beauty was none of our leaders ever either encouraged me to misrepresent or were in a terrible hurry to go out and tell the truth. Of course, social media wasn't as prevalent as it was 10, 12, 15 years ago, but the point being, we always were committed to stating the truth. Our narrative was not built on fast eyeballs or getting notoriety faster than what we deserve. Look, all of branding and all of communication is a marathon. It's a series of miles that you put in for your brand story. And if you miss the endurance part of your brand building, then a crisis will come and just topple you over, and your house will fall like a pack of cards. But if your foundation is strong and if your brand architecture is rooted in some core enduring values where you're not compromising or you're not throwing people under the bus at a drop of a hat, then you're truly set up for long-term success. In the crises that we faced, we always offered counter facts. Anytime somebody said something, we just go all out and offered facts. If there was a statement taken out of context, then we would offer the entire context. Here, there was no statement taken out of context. The pre-interview, the pre-crisis statements were being played, and then the post-crisis, post-fact check statements were also being offered as counterclaims. So there you are contradicting one statement to another, all in a matter of a 3-4 minute video that people can put together in real time these days. So friends, in any crisis, here's some golden rules or nuggets that you can keep. People are willing to forgive mistakes if we come clean. Always come clean. The Johnson & Johnson story of Tylenol crisis, or you look at any other massive world-breaking headline crisis, whenever a brand manager or the talking head or the CEO came in front and offered a genuine explanation, which followed an apology, of course, then the world was willing to forgive and move on. Because ultimately, we are all human beings. We can hide behind corporate jargon, and some of the leaders who would have deputed these spokespeople to this event are still nameless and faceless. I think it behooves this university and the top leaders to come to the forefront and offer a genuine explanation as to what this university is all about and what they were doing as part of their AI and big data and whatever practice that they've invested so much money in. So if you offer the full picture, today's Indian media consumer is a very savvy, well-informed consumer. Back in the day, people were operating in levels of ignorance that have been now dispelled by the world of information. We are very savvy, at least the ones who are particularly following this AI space. If hundreds and thousands of people were milling to attend this event as if it's a show that is like a World Cup finals or that kind of a rush was being seen, which means young people and academicians and all these folks, they know what it takes to operate in this high-speed world of competitive business. So if you say this happened in the fog of war, it was a complete miscommunication, it was a misrepresentation, we own it, we apologize, this is what we are doing, this is the full story, people are willing to forgive you and move on with their lives. But the moment you start the debate that you misunderstood me, I was being quoted out of context, my statements were taken out of context, then you're using the standard line, that cliche that people are sick and tired of. Every time somebody is cornered, they'll say, I was taken out of context. My statements were out of context. You know, even as we speak, a big Telugu massive movie star was also being quoted out of context, so to speak, by a podcaster who was trying to get them to a brand endorsement or something, where a young lady, an influencer, said, this brand manager or the personal communications manager of this mega hero offered me a 42-point do's and don'ts to come to this interview. Now, immediately, pressure came. The brand influencer said, oh, I was quoted out of context. This is a standard line that people use in any time they are caught in a crisis. I'm misrepresented, I'm misunderstood. No, you are not misunderstood, you are not misrepresented, you are not quoted out of context. Be genuine enough to come forth and say, I'm sorry, I made an error. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I'm sorry, this shouldn't have been spoken out. Only then people will believe you, because even in my own journey as a communicator, there were so many errors I made in my corporate journey. For example, let me admit a mistake on record. Once a senior leader in my company did a media interview, and he offered all the employees that this year we're going to give great increments to all the people. Whether he actually said it or whether the reporter quoted out of context, I have no idea. But it came in a prestigious newspaper. I was thrilled that it came in that newspaper, and I forwarded it to about 7,000 employees by sending a list, a reply all to the entire corporate list. All hell broke loose in my company. My boss said that was not a very wise thing to do, and so on and so forth. And I said, if the whole world came to know, and I merely sent it inside the company, you are saying that's unwise? And I kind of went back and forth, but mistakes happen. I could have ignored it and hoped that none of my 7,000 employees did not read this newspaper in one of India's top newspapers. But I made a mistake of doing a reply all in the list, assuming that my company employees will be happy. This man genuinely meant that we'll all get great raises. But the point of that story is errors happen. Mistakes happen. But we need to own those mistakes and say, yeah, I made a mistake. This is uncharacteristic of me. This is my track record. I made a mistake. In my case, my bosses forgave me within a few days, and then we moved on. Same thing will happen. If your track record is built on solid ground and you have many brownie points that you can exchange in terms of goodwill, the general public will also work with you and forgive you if you stand for something. But if all you're doing is double takes and walking back and just putting your messengers under the bus, then the world will not truly appreciate what you stand for. So it's not too late. There are some corrective measures that need to be taken immediately. Go ahead and see if there's anything that you can take out from this video from my personal experience and professional track record of having run crises and been in the eye of the storm for many global crises in my professional journey. Thank you for watching. I hope this is a great experience, for a learning experience for all those involved, and hopefully they'll carry these lessons forward into the future.
All the comeback stories are coming.